All right, good morning, and I hope you've had a good week. I'm glad that you've turned on your device to tune into today's Sunday school lesson. Our lesson today is session 4 from Explore the Bible, or if you don't have that book, it's chapter 4 from Proverbs. The title is The Choice. Our life is full of choices, and sometimes it's easy to decide, but a lot of times we find ourselves what we might call between a rock and a hard spot in a difficult situation. On a more simplistic level, you might think about your favorite restaurant where you eat frequently. When you go there, it's probably very easy to order a meal. You've been there many times. You know what you like from that restaurant. You may not even need to check the menu. But when you go to a new restaurant and you look at all the menu items and you read the descriptions of the new dishes that are available, and so many of them sound so delicious, it's hard to decide. And if you're in a group with just family members, you might even say, well, if everybody gets a different item, then we can sample a lot of different items from the menu. Or you might just look at the servers as they come by your table and look at the food there they take out to other patrons and see what looks good there. So a decision is hard to make sometimes. But now suppose that your choice for lunch is a PB&J with grape jelly or a PB&J with strawberry jelly. That'd be pretty easy to decide upon. So it seems that limited number of choices make our decisions easier to make. But our daily lives are more like the new restaurant. We have many choices. Sometimes they're small and insignificant. Sometimes they're very important and they're large decisions, and they're all in the course of a day. In chapter 4 of Proverbs, Solomon used the analogy of life as a journey with paths or roads to choose or to travel upon. And just like many parents, just like we did when we taught our children, the very words that our parents said to us when we were growing up would spill right out of our mouths. And that's the way it was with Solomon. In the first 10 verses of chapter 4, he reflected on his relationship with his father, King David. He spoke of his father's encouragement to him, and he said, I too was a son to my father and cherished by my mother. And then he went on to tell how his father had encouraged him to make wise choices. And obviously, David's words did not go in one ear and out the other, because now Solomon is there with his sons. Sometimes it's a plural word, sons, and sometimes it's just one word, son. He trained all of them, but there was a concentration on the one son, Rehoboam. That would be the next king. But he was encouraging them to make wise choices, just like his father did when he was growing up. And just like good parents today, Solomon instructed his children, David instructed his son, because they wanted the best for their children, a satisfying and successful life. And just like good parents today, though, they could point their children in the right direction. They could encourage them to make good choices. They could tell him places to avoid, people to avoid, but they could not live the life of their child. And that's where we start our lesson today in verse 11. And it says, I have taught thee in the way of wisdom. I have led thee in right paths. In verse 10, Solomon reverted to the instruction from God in the Ten Commandments that said honoring parents brings a full life. When Solomon taught about choosing the path of wisdom, though, the impact that he had was far beyond just the young boys that were being trained at that time. The wisdom that he spoke of, or seeing things as God does, is the same for us now as it was in the royal courts of Solomon's time. And then the last word in this scripture is paths, which indicates his analogy of life being a journey. One, this journey in life has a straight path, and it also has a crooked road. And a few weeks ago, I said that our Bible is our lively GPS. And just like the GPS on our car, sometimes we ignore the instructions, or sometimes we just miss the turn and we have to backtrack a little bit. Well, our GPS, our Bible, guides us to the right path. Sometimes we ignore it. Sometimes we miss the turn and we have to backtrack a little bit. But we know that the straight road is much easier and safer to travel on than one with a lot of crooks and turns. Now, in verse 12, it says, "When thou goest, thy steps shall not be straitened, and when thou runnest, thou shalt not stumble." The steps indicated the distance that we travel on this life journey, and run indicated the speed. Either way, whether we're speaking of our years on the journey or our speed, would not be hindered by obstacles when we choose the path that seeks God's wisdom. We may encounter some difficulties and problems in life, but our quest to find God's wisdom would not be blocked, and we won't be tripped up by circumstances, the problems, or the difficulties in our life while we're continuing on the right path and seeking God's wisdom. In verse 13, he says, "Take fast hold of instruction. Let her," meaning wisdom, because he also used an analogy of wisdom as a female, as a woman, "let her not go. Keep her, for she is thy life." Now, if you imagine yourself hanging over a cliff, and your only hope of being pulled up to safety would be to hold on to a rope, you can imagine how you would hold so tightly to that rope. You would have a strong grip, as strongly as your body would allow. Solomon advised his sons to hold on to the instruction with a firm grip, a firm grasp. In other words, with all of your being, hold on to this instruction, to this godly wisdom. Listen to it, internalize it, and follow it. Keep it close to you so that it can't be taken away. Now, no one can take away your instructions. No person can do that. But our own preoccupation with other things may be what removes the instruction from our vision. It could be worldly desires that can cause us to lose sight of our wisdom. And so far, Solomon has instructed his sons as what they should do. And now he switches over to what they should avoid in verses 14 and 15. He says, "Enter not into the path of the wicked, and go not in the way of evil men. Avoid it, pass not by it, turn from it, and pass away." This speaks of that curvy, crooked road that has many pitfalls, the one that leads away from godly instruction. Solomon wanted his sons to stay clear of it. In fact, this was a stern warning to not even pass in the direction of this path. There were several synonyms that he used to warn them. He said, avoid it, pass not by it, turn from it, and pass away. And we know, you think about some things that you need to avoid. Suppose you don't need to eat ice cream. Well, then what you do is don't go into the ice cream shop. Suppose you don't need to spend any more money this month from your budget. So you don't go to Walmart and you don't go to Belk's and browse around, because you know you're likely to do exactly what you don't need to do. So Solomon warns us, said, don't even go in that direction. Steer clear, avoid it. Because he knew too, one step on the wrong road makes it easier to take another step on that wrong road. And without stepping away, then a person can find that they've taken a lot of steps and they seem to be trapped in a sinful lifestyle. In verses 16 and 17, he describes the life of the wicked. They live for evil, and eventually they threaten the well-being of an entire community. It says, "For they sleep not, except they have done mischief, and their sleep is taken away, unless they cause some to fall. For they eat the bread of wickedness and drink the wine of violence." In other words, we're talking about amoral people, people who have no morals. They have a lifestyle of evil. It has violence, it's deception, and it creates a group of people with no restraints, no morality, and they thrive in the darkness to hide their criminal behavior. You might even think about recently, we've had a lot of curfews, and it happens at night because people begin to break the laws at night. My granddaughter's here, and I've asked her to be quiet and to be away while I'm finishing this lesson. So I'm going to ask you one more time. Go in there and sit down until I finish. Okay, excuse that interruption. Verses 18 and 19 say, "But the path of the just is as the shining light that shineth more and more into the perfect day." So there's a great contrast between those people who love the darkness and the evil and those who are trying to follow God's wisdom. Godly instruction, like the sun that gets brighter and brighter as the day goes on, it says it shines more and more into the perfect day. Godly instruction becomes more clear and brighter as we grow in it. The more we grow in godly instruction, the clearer and the brighter it becomes. And it says the way of the wicked is as darkness. They know not at what they stumble. So he is explaining the stark contrast of the paths that we have to choose in our life. We want to choose that straight path. Now, in verses 20 to 23 is Solomon's third direct appeal to his son. And we've even mentioned before that when something is important, if it's very, very important, we have a tendency to repeat it. This was his third direct appeal to his son. And he did it because he knew that living on the righteous path would require commitment, obedience, self-discipline, and what we have in our hearts, what we have stored in our hearts is what we're going to live out in our daily lives. So Solomon knew that keeping these instructions close to your heart would keep them alive in your life. So in verses 20 to 23, he says, "My son," third time he's appealed to him, "attend to my words, incline thine ear unto my sayings, let them not depart from thine eyes, keep them in the midst of thine heart." What's in your heart comes out in your life, for they are life unto those who find them, and health to all their flesh. Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. Verses 24 and 25 say, "Put away thee a froward mouth." Have you ever seen someone who looks so pretty, just a beautiful person, until they opened their mouth and filth started spilling out, or language that you did not want to hear, or maybe even obvious lies? He said, keep that away from your mouth, and perverse lips put far from thee. Let thine eyes look right on, and let thine eyelids look straight before thee. When I read this, I thought, well, this whole scripture is summed up in the words of a child's song. And I know you probably remembered. It says, "Be careful, little eyes, what you see. Be careful, little ears, what you hear. Be careful, little tongue, what you say. Be careful, little hands, what you do. Be careful, little feet, where you go, because the Father up above is looking down on us. Be careful, little." We need to move. We need to move through our life with that little song in our heart. We need to be trusting like a child and obedient like a child. Now, in verses 26 and 27, it says, "Ponder the path of thy feet, and let all thy ways be established." In other words, keep your feet on solid ground. Pay close attention to where you're walking. Don't get tripped up in the darkness and don't even know why you fell, like those that do not follow God's instructions. He said, "Turn not to the right hand nor to the left. Remove thy foot from evil." All lives can be sidetracked. As hard as we try, we can take a wrong turn. We can speak a wrong word, but we have to keep our eyes straight ahead, and we have to listen to that Holy Spirit when it speaks to us. Because, a long time ago, and I don't even know if people have mules anymore now, but you ever known of blinders on a mule or horse? It would be nice that once we accepted salvation from Christ, that he put blinders on us, because that kept the animal from looking to the left or looking from the right. Maybe something wouldn't startle it, or maybe it didn't see things that it wanted to reach over and grab and eat. If we could keep our eyes, we need some spiritual blinders, and we keep our eyes focused ahead, because it does require a concentrated effort. It requires our conscious effort. It's not something that just happens automatically. It requires our self-discipline, and it requires a commitment. And, you know, when you make a New Year's resolution, you think about the commitments that you make sometimes, but you don't really get the self-discipline that go with it. New Year's resolutions, diets, exercise programs, all of these things have to have a commitment, and you have to be dedicated. That's the way it is with our righteous life. We have to have a self-discipline, a commitment, and we have to be dedicated. Every choice that we make either sends us one step further down that straight road, or it sends us one step over toward a crooked and curvy path. But wisdom is not just knowing God's instructions. You know, you can read the Bible. That's the instructions that we're given. That's what we're told to do, what we're told to not do. It's not just knowing those instructions, but it's taking those instructions and applying them in our everyday life and in our everyday choices. We look at choices we have to make or decisions we have to make, and we weigh it against the instructions that God has given to us. And we do that every day, Monday through Sunday, every day. But sadly, we don't just wake up one day and find that we're totally wise. It's a continuous process. You think about if you're going to build a brick wall, you have to have the foundation first. And our foundation would be Jesus and our salvation. Well, when you build that brick wall, you put each brick on one at a time. Sometimes you might look and one might be just a little bit crooked or curved, and you straighten it up as quickly as you can before it seals in the cement. Well, our little decisions, our wisdom is like the small bricks that are placed one at a time. It's our small decisions that we make one at a time that we weigh against the instructions that God has given to us. And sometimes we're given warning signs. The Holy Spirit that lives within us gives us warning signs. The scriptures in the Bible give us warning signs that sometimes we ignore. But we have to make sure that these signs that we adhere to so that we don't step off into the wrong path. So now is the time for a self-evaluation. Are there any warning signs in your life that you're ignoring or you're trying to push aside and not heed to? And that's what we have to think about in our daily life, in our decisions that we make. And we build each decision. Each decision builds constantly to secure our wisdom in God and our trust in God. So I thank you for listening today. I pray that we will all continue to be safe. I hope that you'll be safe and that you will help keep others safe. We're all in this world together, and it's up to all of us to turn everything around. We need to turn to God, and I hope that you'll take the time to have an earnest prayer for our country, for our church, for everything that's going on. An earnest prayer, the kind that takes energy and time. And I thank you again. And if everything goes well, I'll be back again next week, and I hope you'll be able to join too. Thank you.